Okay, let me begin talking now, and I'm going to pick my words carefully, and I'm going to move carefully and just walk around a bit and talk. What I want to talk about now is something that I alluded to in a recent conductor's. No, it wasn't a conductor's video. It was a, what the heck was it? It was the the comments thread video. And you see, I'm feeling all mellow right now. I just did a softypapa video. It's like drinking a warm glass of milk. It just calms me down. Being softypapa calms me down. Anyway, okay, back on topic. In the recent, yesterday's, it was the 12/11/2010 comments thread. I talked about, or it was today, I made it this morning. I talked about masculine irresponsibility, macho irresponsibility in Japan. And I want to, someone in comments asked to mention that they would like to see more, maybe learn more about that. So I'm going to go ahead and try to talk about that now. Here's what I'm going to do, though. I am speaking from the point of ignorance. I'm not a scholar or even very well read on this topic. I'm only going to relate to you the information as I have received it. I'm not even going to call them facts, just information, and let you take it from there. And if you disagree with me, please feel free to call me on it. Let me know. Call me dumb, whatever you want. I'd say, hey, that's how we learn sometimes, right? Okay, here we go. Macho irresponsibility. Now, it's well known around the world. The Japanese, one of the icons of images of the Japanese is, in addition to the geisha and the taking off the shoes and the stuff, and one of those is the idea that men come first. That basically it's a male-dominated society, and that males take a leading role in the country, in the lifestyle here. And that's true, they really do. Women play a far more important role than many might imagine, albeit it is often not a hidden role, but very rarely talked about role. Women really do lead the family. They really are in charge in so many ways. Many Japanese men could barely function without the women in their lives, their mothers or their wives. But that said, they do get a lot of privilege. I've had young Japanese women tell me, young Japanese women who have lived abroad, tell me that one of the big differences between Japanese men and the men that they knew abroad was that Japanese men expect to get their way. Now, this doesn't mean that Japanese men are bastards, or that they're not nice, or they're inconsiderate. Japanese men are some of the nicest people I've ever known, some of the most considerate, selfless people I've ever known. But that said, they can also expect to play a leading role in their own lives. And it may sometimes seem strange, how can those two balance and coexist? And maybe they don't, and it's a case-by-case basis. Now let's explore a little bit of the roots of this. This wasn't always the case. If you look back into the Edo period, 1600 to 1868, basically up until the end of the feudal period, records show that men weren't necessarily as the macho dominant guys that they are now. There were many booklets and pamphlets were very popular for men during this period, teaching men basically domestic skills, how to raise children, how to cook, how to care for the house. It would seem then that this evidence would indicate that the popularity of these books would indicate that men took a role in the day-to-day life of their families. They didn't just come home. Part of the image now that we have of the man is he comes home and he's the lord of his household. He enters the house, he sits down at the table, he drinks his sake and has his little snack with it, gets food, he served his food, and he's the lord of his house, and he doesn't do much outside of that. And now that image is backed up with fact. I can testify to it with my own father-in-law and many other older Japanese men that I've known, not to mention a few younger Japanese men as well. So where did this more modern image come into existence? Well, I'm speculating now. This is speculation on my part. I really don't have any evidence here, but I believe that it probably came about at the end of the feudal period and the beginning of the modern period. That would be the start of the Meiji period, when Japan decided to open its doors, or some might say were coerced into opening their doors and modernizing it. But the Japanese quickly wrapped their arms around this idea and wanted to become a modern nation very quickly. And many social changes as well as customs and cultural changes occurred to enable this. One of the things that had to happen was there had to be a strong sense of discipline in order to organize and to effect a modernization plan. I mean, Japan basically was faced with world powers that were incredibly powerful, incredibly strong strong and incredibly modern in comparison to their feudal era technology. It's an interesting fact, and I've pointed this out in the videos in the past, that Japan is really the only Asian culture in the Far East that I believe is the only one that survived colonization. Someone might call me on that, but I think Japan was the only one. They knew what was happening. They saw what was happening in China. They saw what was happening around Asia. They knew that the colonial powers were banging at the doors, and they acted quick to implement changes to strengthen themselves, and they did. They became one of the most strongest militaries in this hemisphere, and they defeated the Russians in the Japan-Russo War. Amazing things. Now, one of the things that I'm leading up to now is the militarization. Japan had to develop a military quickly, a strong military, an effective military that had discipline, and was based on a very much a sense of masculine pride, strength, and loyalty and duty. Now, that all really came about at the start of the Meiji period. Those principles existed previously with the samurai, but they really didn't extend to the other classes in Japanese society. With the beginning of the Meiji period, that was to spread to the entire culture. So what we have then is a rapid change in the culture, leaning towards modernization, leaning towards a more military frame of mind that led to a lot of problems later for them, but this caused a lot of changes in the culture. Now, I believe that it was this time that we began to see the change in the family. We began to see men taking this role of being the leader and being proud and being above condemnation, above reproach, and being almost to the point of being a little deity, a petty tyrant, so to speak, to reuse a word I read somewhere. And this idea of a tyrant, in fact, came into existence. If you read books describing the Taisho period in particular, this is 1912 to 1926, you can read anecdotal evidence, one case after another, of the injury and abuse and suffering that families, and particularly women, underwent at the hands of their incredibly arrogant husbands who were quite irresponsible. This is where we start getting into the Macho responsibility. Quite irresponsible with regard to the welfare of others in order to satisfy their own sense of pride and satisfaction. Now, I'm making a pretty extreme statement here, but I think that it holds up in terms of my experience. Don't know if I can hold that up in terms of academic, if it can hold under the scrutiny of academic light. So then now we have that condition where we have the Taisho era man. The Taisho era man is very proud and very, very dominant and very strong, and that continued right up through into in Showa period. Now let's go to the Showa period now. The Showa period, 1926 to 1989, one of the classics. That's where most Japanese have a great deal of sentimentality towards the Taisho, towards the Showa period. Modern Japanese, those who are alive now. I'm a Showa period child. I was born in 1964 in Showa 39, as was my wife. We grew up in this post-war era, and it's a very important period for people. Now, there's an icon of the Showa period that helps to illustrate this macho irresponsibility. Let's move now to Shitamachi in Tokyo. Shitamachi is a district in Tokyo famous for its working class establishments. Many small shops, making craftsmen, making pieces for shrines or houses or whatever it could be. It's just tiny little operations and shops, and lots of blue-collar workers. Now, the operating principle for the Shitamachi working man. Now, I know this firsthand from a friend of mine who grew up in Shitamachi and has a long history of family that lives in Shitamachi, and he told me this story one night. He said, in Shitamachi, if you're a blue-collar working man, it is a paramount that you wake up in poverty every morning. Now, I may be a little extreme in saying it's paramount, but it is a principle, it is a point of pride to wake up poor. What he means by that is that you work hard during the day. You work hard. You're with your comrades. You're working and you're doing your thing. But then you go out at night and you spend like crazy. You go to the izakaya. You drink. You make merry. You have fun. And then you wake up broke the next morning and start it all over again. A fine state of affairs for a single man. But I imagine that any man that chose to have a family, that might be a bit of a tough way to go for the family life. So this then illustrates the extreme example of macho irresponsibility, where the sense of self, the sense of pride, the sense of self-satisfaction, to total disregard for others, even to the welfare of family and friends, really is it's like an edifice of self. And when you have an edifice of self and you are paramount upon it, and there is nothing, everything else is below, then irresponsibility is not even something that you would think about. It's simply a factor of things. And you can see this again in the Showa image of the exploding husband hurtling the table. The family's dining around the floor and on the table, hurtling the table in anger through the air, dishes flying through the air. Any Japanese that's contemporary to my age will know this image, and it's a stereotype, and it's not exactly one that you see every day. I've certainly never seen it, but again, it illustrates this macho irresponsibility. So what we come down to is the modern Japanese man, who basically has a lineage, a heritage of this attitude and this atmosphere, who he is kind at heart and he is a good man, but there is something inside of him that may not allow him to suffer humiliation in the face of public or family, and therefore he may disregard the welfare of others. I'm talking about trivial little points like driving and letting someone come in, or taking up too much space on the train on the bench, so that you spread your legs out and you're taking up all that space. They're probably not consciously thinking about that, or the way of talking too loud, or these incredible, massive sneezes that Japanese men do that are an expression of self and presence. Okay, now I'm going to wrap it up now. And I think that I've given the information that I have. Facts, they may not be. Speculation, they may be. Based on my experience, yes. You can take that and do what you want with it. But there you go. My ideas about the macho irresponsibility of the Japanese man and its heritage from the past. There you go. And I'm going to leave now. The light is fading in the gloomy Shinto shrine. It's time for me to go home. I hope you all have a wonderful evening. Thank you for stopping by to have a look. It's always, always a great time to stop and chat with you. Take care, everybody.